Hey everybody, welcome back to Change Your Perspective, Change Your Awareness, Change Your Life. I'm Dr. Michelina AF, hashtag that felon doctor, here to talk to you more about overcoming adversity and challenges you may be facing in your life at some point or another. I will just say I apologize for my voice. I'm down with something, not going to stop us, but it may make us sound a little weird and a little nasally. Apologize for that. So we're talking today about the fourth sort of conflict, which is person versus society. Now, if you're me, you're very well versed in this particular conflict. I have been pissing off society from out the womb. And I'm not kidding, guys. So when you think about person versus society conflict, you want to think mob versus the individual, or individual versus the mob. If you've read To Kill a Mockingbird, there's a moment where Scout is outside of the jail and she is like one versus the entire mob, right? And that's the sort of person versus society conflict. Atticus versus the entire town, person versus society conflict. Me versus anybody in any sphere of influence I've ever had, person versus society conflict. What that might look like, I'm going to give you the example of when I was in high school. So it really very much felt like me versus everybody in my high school, for the most part, my freshman year. I will tell you truthfully that it was like those movies you watch as a kid where when you just entered the room, everybody was actually just talking about you. You're looking in the bathroom and your name is graffitied on the walls. Like, that was my experience. Through some sexual not great choices that I brought on, and through some that I did not bring on, the entire school thought I was like this huge slut, which, like, hey, maybe I was. I don't know. I was 14, so sure. So I had a very small high school. I grew up in a town that had, it was a 2 square mile town. It was very small. And it was one of those towns where, parents and grandparents stayed and hung out. And that's kind of like rare, I guess, in New Jersey, but that existed. And so you can look it up. I mean, you can see all my records online. I'm not lying. I graduated with a class of 72 in high school. So it was like very small. There was about 400 kids in the whole school from 9 to 12. And so what happens in a small town is that something happens in first period and then everybody knows it by like third or fourth period. And we had cell phones. Like, that was, we had cell phones. We had texting capabilities. Like, we didn't have the iPhone until like, I'd say, I think my senior year, but like my freshman year, we had issues. And so we had cyberbullying, we had AIM, like we had the beginnings of the problems before any laws came in to contradict them, right? So my generation started the cyberbully. And I got it all over. Like, I was cyberbullied and I was regular bullied. And so when you have that kind of adversity, person versus society, right? Now we have it in a way that is both electronic and in person. So like, for my high school experience, not only was I being bullied in my day-to-day reality, but I was also unsafe to go online because I was getting bullied and talked about there too. Right? Away messages were a thing, and like, I was on those. People just loved to talk about me. And so I'm just sitting there trying to like live. So when you have a person versus society conflict, that's a very tough thing. I've posted this before, and I will probably talk about it again. And it's this idea, it's this African proverb that if the child feels neglected by the village, the child will burn the village down to feel its warmth. Right? And so I have always been trying to prove that I am good enough to be accepted. That's a thing I do as a result of being in person-society conflict. And I try hard not to do it now, but it was something I always did. So what my pattern was, and I didn't know, but I figured it out through a lot of, analysis. I would go into a place like freshman year of high school. I would go into the society, the sphere of influence that I had, and it would be a complete shit show. Like, it would never be good. Like, it would always be some kind of adversity because I existed. And then I would work really hard for like the next 3 or 4 years to make myself invaluable to the place, to the school, perhaps. I was homecoming queen. I was scholar athlete. Like when I left, I was like at the top of the thing. And then once I finished it, I cut it off. I was like, okay, and we're done, right? Because it was like, now that I've made the issue, I've overcome the issue, I've surpassed the issue, and now I don't care. And it's not, and I've done that everywhere. I've done that, high school I did that, I did it in college, I did it in my first teaching job, like always the pattern. Because I was maladjusted in society because I didn't know how to just show up and be accepted in a place because I've never shown up and been accepted in a place. Like that's literally never happened. And I'm not kidding when I say I walked my first day of 7th grade. I was in the new school. We had moved. I walked on the playground and I'm not kidding you. I looked around and some girl, I won't say her name, looked at me, came over to me and was like, do you have a problem? I was like, I'm new here. What are you talking about? But I was defiant, right? So I was like, yeah, your outfit's my problem, right? And of course, that's the way to do it, Michelina. No, it wasn't. But I literally walk on the scene and piss people off, and that is a true story. Like, guys, that happened. Like, that was a thing. And she and I had adversity throughout the entire. We were friends, and then we were enemies, and then we were frenemies, and then we like switched boyfriends. There was a lot of weird crap that happened, right? So I cannot make this stuff up. I will tell you the first day of my first teaching job at the school that I was eventually expelled from, we'll say, when I was teaching, I pulled in and I parked in the wrong spot. And a teacher was like, you can't park here. And I was like, okay. And so then I walk into the English department and that same teacher was in there. And she and I, for the rest of the time, had a conflict. I did not even, I walked onto the scene. I parked in a spot. Like I didn't know, but I didn't know. Right. So there are definitely times, like for myself, and I could talk about this conflict all day because I'm always living in this conflict. There are times that I do cause the adversity. Like, hey, am I the problem? Yeah, 100%. But there are also times that I just show up and people get pissed off. And I know that about myself. Like I'm very divisive. Like I show up in a space, you either really resonate with me or you do not. And I'm like, cool, like, 'cause I'm not here to be lukewarm, you know? The Bible even says, like, God will spew out a lukewarm Christian. Like, don't be mediocre. Be extraordinarily something. Like, don't be mediocre. So I've never been somebody that is just like, oh, Michelina? Huh, she's all right. Like, I could take her or leave her. I've never seen it. I've never seen it. And so this person versus society conflict is a tricky one because it's like, you're constantly feeling like you don't belong, you're not accepted, you have no place, rejection, like all of these things that you can internalize. And I absolutely did and have internalized that, where like, I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to be accepted here. Like, I've just made peace with it to the point where I actually like, I understand when people don't like me. I get that. I really do. I'm like, okay. I'm a little more confused about why people do like me. I'm like, why would you? You know, and I had to work through that. I really did, because I had internalized being disliked so much that I'm like, yeah, of course people don't like me. Why would they? Right. So it can really screw your self-concept up. This person versus society conflict can absolutely screw up your self-concept. So if you have that, if you've been that person, right, and I'm giving you an overview of conflicts here to find out which ones you resonate with for your life. They might not all resonate. Like I said, person versus nature, not really mine, thank God. The other 3 that we've covered so far, yes, I've got them all, you know? So person versus society is a big one, because if you've been that hated on person, that bullied person, that targeted person, we'll say, you've probably got, I'm saying this, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but you've probably got bigger issues to work with, because it means that your sphere of influence has been bigger. So like you've been the talk of more town than just somebody who doesn't have that conflict. Like someone who's just kind of flown under the radar will have more person versus person conflict probably, or person versus self conflict. Somebody who's never flown under the radar will have a bigger sort of thing to contend with. So if you do have the person versus society conflict, it is a kind of a serious one, and it will show up again and again and again and again and again until you work with what it's done to you. And I say that because I keep talking about 14 years in a felony. What happened to me when I was 14 happened to me again when I was 28 on a larger scale with more dire and serious consequences, where I had shown up in a space and it looked like I was the person that instigated. And actually that wasn't the case at all. And it happened when I was 14, it happened when I was 28. And so I recognized the pattern at that point. I was like, oh my God, like I'm still going around the same mountain. Like this pattern has to shift. I realized a lot of patterns actually for myself. So I'm hoping this will help you realize any patterns that you have, if you have them from this conflict, right? So if you are looking for awareness, I'm hoping that you're getting it here. If you're ready to take action, acornsandoaks.vhx.tv. You have some courses there that will definitely help you out. And I'm going to keep bringing you this good stuff. So if you like the channel, like, subscribe, tell your friends, hit the bell, comment below. Thanks for hanging out here. I'll see you guys in the next video.